Hi, and a warm welcome to our Tacton Summit, Conscious Manufacturing. My name is Cecilia Hammarin, and I'm the host for our summit this spring. This time, our summit is a two-day event where we today will focus on the why. Why should sustainability be on your agenda, and how technology can be an enabler and support conscious manufacturing. And that here at Tacton, we are committed to try to take our responsibility and do our part. So as part of this strategy for us, we have hired a sustainability manager, which is a new role here at Tacton. And our new sustainability manager is Madeleine Bergrahm. And Madeleine started as an engineer, but has spent her last 20 years working with sustainability in the manufacturing industry. And a warm welcome to Tacton, Madeleine. It's great to have you on board. And I'll give the word to you to hear your closing remarks based on what we have learned from today's speakers.
Sure, I'm very happy to be here. It's been so interesting to listen to these experts in different fields, so to say. I'd like to start by saying that the possibilities of CPQ, using CPQ for industrial manufacturing is really at its starting point. I think that you've also all heard this, so to say. So I will just reflect on what the other speakers said, and then I will also add a few things from Gartner, Predictions 2022, a report that they've made. And at the end, I'll also, mention a few things about regulations and market demand, of course. But also, I think it's key to mention that sustainability is a very broad concept. So it's not only, we tend to talk about it when we actually mean environment and financial topics, and the social side of things, the social topics in supply chain, for instance, or even in our own companies, is not really part of how we use the concept today. So we really focus on environment. Eventually we will go into further into social topics also. But right now, I'd say it's more economy and ecology that we cover. Well, very briefly, we started out here with my colleague Nils, and he mentioned the foundation of the manufacturing. The foundation of the modern world is manufacturing, and that's of course true. It's we can just look around us and see all the things that are produced. So it's a must, and we have to have manufacturing, of course, and it's good, and it's great, but it also has some drawbacks when it comes to the impact, the climate impact. He also reflected on companies with a higher purpose. They earn more money, and I say companies with a higher purpose. It's not only related to sustainability, but it's also related to being a well-kept company. In all the sense of that word. And as Nils also mentioned, being a well-kept company means that you actually attract the right people, talented people. And then Nils, he concluded with this, man on the moon, similar, saying similar to man on the moon process, so to say, that, taking sustainability further will be a challenge that we need to be very innovative to make it happen, but it can create a competitive edge. And of course, that's exactly what we saw from Bastian later on. And then we came to Michael and how we are kind of working with building, starting from sustainability, building features into our CPQ. And of course, it's not an easy journey, because it has to do with gathering the right type of data and the right data with right accuracy. So he was reflecting on this. And he was also reflecting on that, there is this concept of the life cycle, and that some manufacturers might have data for some phases, but not for others, and so on. And that the use phase is usually have the main environmental impact. But my take on this is also that, you can start with the obvious, and there are two things. It doesn't have to be so difficult. You can start with the obvious things like the oversizing issue and the minimizing waste issue that topic or challenge that he mentioned, because they are the models we have today are able to a certain level to address this, but the outcome is maybe not shown to the CPQ user as an environmental challenge, and that's where we should add that information to the user interface, so it's obvious that oversizing is not only like a financial thing. It may cost more to use more materials, but it also has like an environmental side to it. So after these two speakers, we came to Bastian and Pluspack, and he kind of tied it together. I would say it's lovely to hear this, how you handle this, about the challenges and how you measure things, and especially, sorry, I need to go to that. So now we're on the right track. So guided selling. This is what it's all about, really. To you, Bastian, you also mentioned we want to sell the right products, and to be able to do this, of course, we need to show commonly the end customer what is the environmental benefit, and so they can choose the right product. And I really like the quote here. It talks about being cool. Configuration is cool. Of course, everybody wants to be cool, so that's a real nice quote. You also mentioned that Pluspack has introduced a way to relate sales of circular products to the overall sales, and that is key, of course, to start to integrate sustainability or environment into your strategies, as you talked about, and also measure how much does it do on the bottom line. So that's it's a recipe for success. And then we came to some concepts that might be, you talked about the customer experience, and then went into the scope 1, 2, and 3. And I just wanted to highlight here that Scope 1 and 2, it's a terminology that comes from the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. It talks about your own emissions, the ones that we see, our own electricity used in our own operations. And then Scope 3, that's the holy grail, so to say. How do you come to Scope 3? How do you understand Scope 3? Because Scope 3 is all of the materials that are used in a product, and then the impact of use of that product in the use phase. That is the Scope 3. And this is where it's, of course, tricky, and also really interesting to hear about that you're looking into how to estimate also Scope 3. So then, as promised, I'm just very briefly going to reflect on Gartner. So they have a report called Predictions 2022, Manufacturing CIOs Increase Responsibility for Sustainability and Operations. So what it really says is that, of course, that there is a need for more detailed information, both about the process itself that you have in a manufacturing company, but also the products. And it's on the shoulder of the IT department to try to establish these type of data, not data gathering maybe, but data processing and so on. And as we can see here, also it's not like a mission for the few; it's a mission for almost half of the IT departments will have to be responsible for data modeling of sustainability. So I think it was, of course, interesting to see this. And there is a linkage to CPQ here, because CPQ when you use it, as we hope we can use it in the future, it will be closely connected to the environmental profile of the products that you want to sell. And then moving into regulations. So there's been different paces in different regions, I would say. The EU has for some years now had a regulation for companies, so the businesses have had to report on so-called non-financials. And it's been part of the annual report. So the reason to this was that, there are things connected to sustainability that could have a major financial impact. So that's why there's been a need to start to report on this. And now we have, as also we've heard other speakers say before here, changes in the US, and these proposed changes are kind of more advanced, I would say, than we see right now in the EU. Of course, the EU will also change, but anyway, and it talks about scope 1, 2, and 3. So even the ones that are very difficult to estimate and to measure today. And it comes, I would say, this one comes from the US SEC, so the draft, the suggestion. So the US SEC is the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, and they were created to kind of see to that financial data is not used for market manipulation. So it's kind of interesting that they are the ones that draft this type of legislation. I mean, pinpointing the need for accuracy in data and standards. Market demand. So there are different flavors of market demand, and I won't go through all of this. But I want to say that, of course, there are others also that look into how much of the sales is eco-conscious product. You have, for instance, Canon Medical that do this. If you're a seller, you want to sell to UK public sector, for instance, you have to have a climate reduction plan for 2050. And to be able to do this, you will also have to estimate what is the impact of your product that you put on the market. And of course, you can actually get that from a future CPQ model. So there is a push and a pull, so to say. And with this, just wanted to kind of get back to the experts that we've heard before, because we've heard a lot of good stuff today. So I have one question for them, but maybe I should we go for the question right away, Cecilia, or is there any question for me before we jump into
Yes, I think so. Let's start with that, and then we'll see if any come in between. Okay?
Okay, perfect. So we welcome back then Niels and Michael and Bastian. And I would like to start with you, Niels. I mean, if you only have 1 minute and you would have to give an actionable advice to those that listen, what would that be related to what you covered in your speech? Sorry, I can't hear you.
You're on mute.
I was on mute. No, the one action point I would say is start understanding how you can tag your products with especially emission-related information. Make sure that you get a grasp on how you can use the data for the different products that you eventually sell. Because back to the point of before, yes, you will be you will be required to report on your product. But if you want to be able to use that actively in sales, you need to have it up front. I think Bastian said it as well. You need to be able to use it in the sales phase.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Short and precise.
I can tie into that. I mean, that's basically what half of my presentation was about. So yes, you should definitely start looking at that. But I mean, it's a big step to get everything there. So start maybe by just looking at one parameter or so, like I mentioned, energy consumption, or it could be something else. But what's important for your products, and start with that. I think that's you need to start somewhere.
Yeah, certainly agree. Thank you. And then Bastian, what would your advice be to listeners?
Well, then I will argue that start with the customers, because we all serve different kind of customer segments, and they all have different kind of needs, and we need to understand these, and we need to really try to put ourselves in their shoes to understand their pains and how they operate. We have a tendency to do a lot of thinking inside out, but we need to try to reverse it and maybe be inspired by more consumer-oriented businesses to see what can we learn from them and in terms of working with consumers, because eventually our customers are also consumers, and they adapt their same side rationalities and logics when they go out and purchase new Conde shoes or whatever it is they purchase for themselves and their families. So I think that is also very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Helping them to make informed choices, because it helps them, and it's helped the selling company to be able to put more environmentally sound, I would say, products on the market. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your expertise here. So Cecilia, do we have any?
Well, we actually have one question that come in to Pluspack in between. So when you're saying one solution is more sustainable than another, are you looking at the complete life cycle, as suggested in the presentation before, raw material, production, energy to recycle? Or is it fair to say that the recyclable does not mean it is automatically more sustainable than, let's say, combustible?
Good questions. I think there are different answers to that. I think we should look at it from a product perspective. And again, here, it's very important that you are very open and clear on what you're communicating, because it can easily be a mix, and then you just make it worse for yourself. So I'm not an expert in this field, but then you need to talk to my colleagues in here. But when you look from a material perspective, some materials can be recycled, some cannot. And we argue that when it comes to food packaging, you should focus on the materials that can be recycled. And here, for instance, biodegradable materials are not materials that we consider to be materials that you can recycle. So that's the first discussion, and you can have lots of discussions, good discussions with customers and others about that. Then, of course, when you look at sustainable and sustainability, that's a broader sense, and that's also important here to understand that, because I agree, maybe you could choose the right material, but how you distribute it, maybe how you produce it is not good, so to say, then you can easily have other alternatives which might be more sustainable. So it's a balancing act, and that's also why you need to start small, I think, and then you have the right data, and then be open and transparent as much as possible. Also where maybe you are in doubt, or maybe where you're not that supported, because then it's up for customers to make their own choices. And I think that's what we can do, is that we can give them opportunities as good as we can, be transparent about what is the data, what is the validity, where does it come from, and where are we also in doubt. And then we can have an open-minded discussion about it, because we can't hide about it. We can't hide about advertising or nice brands, because our customers, consumers, they will see right through it. And they will just harm ourselves in the end.